Right. Welcome to chapter 7 of our main text in instructional media for learning and teaching that we have been going through together for the past few weeks. So today we'll look at chapter 7, sorry, connecting learners at a distance. Now, you realize that it's very, very important that you as a 21st century teacher gets to understand one of the many aspects that you need to consider if you have to be relevant in the 21st century classroom. Now, with the coming of COVID, you realize that distance education is actually the way to go. And even what we are actually doing here, miles away from you, is part of what we can term as distance education. So we'll look at chapter 7, connecting learners at a distance. And so I invite you to pay particular attention. What are the knowledge outcomes for this particular chapter? First, we are going to define what distance learning is. We'll state a rationale for the educational use of distance learning, not only at tertiary level, but we are emphasizing more on elementary, middle level, and secondary education levels. Explain how audio and television systems can help facilitate distance education. Compare and contrast online distance learning. Describe characteristics of local area networks, commonly known as the LANs, and I'm sure you dealt with these aspects if you did ICT in education, and also wide area networks, intranets, and wireless networks. We'll also discuss 5 internet networks, guidelines from those who need to network on a day-to-day basis. And then we'll see how we can select an example of a copyright concern and explain why it is important for you as teachers actually to be aware of that. So basically the main goal of this particular lecture is to describe distance education and how it can facilitate student learning, okay? We cannot ignore this. Now, we need to state from the onset that one of the greatest advantages that that is being offered by much of what we see in modern electronic technology is simply the ability to be able to interact without the teacher's direct presence in a classroom situation. Like I mentioned earlier on, you are out there miles and miles away from me, but we are able to coordinate. We are able to interact one with the other, right? So that is, we can both time shift instruction. We can experience it at some time after the live session, like what I'm doing now. I'm recording this particular lecture so that at your own time you're able to listen to it, and we can, and that's what we mean by time shifting instruction. And also we can also place shift instruction. Experience such instruction at some place away from the live teacher and still get the point that the teacher is trying to convey to you. So this particular lecture is gotten from our main texts that we have been emphasizing by Shannon and others. And I want to let you know that this was one of the first invasions in the area of instructional media and technology for learning that has made it possible to time shift and place shift instruction, to use that continues to present even to this day. And so it's a very useful book that you, a teacher, should be able to look at systematically. Now, there are basically three types of distance education, as emphasized in much of what we see in literature. And I'm sure you discussed in the course ICT in education issues to do with synchronous and asynchronous communication or instruction. I want to remind you that when we talk about synchronous instruction, this is a situation where instruction actually takes place at the same time, but in different locations, right? Like what we are doing now. I'm right here in Jamaica, you're in Zambia, and even within Zambia, others are in Lusaka, others are in Choma, others are in Siavonga. Even if the time differences are there, but we are able to interact at a specific time. That is what we mean by synchronous instruction. Same time, people being in different locations. Blended learning, in one hand, is basically the mixture of time and the location. The blending, where at the same time you are able to do to follow instruction even away from the lecturer, right? And sometimes you are given work to do on face-to-face, or it can be through online, and then you can be asked to look at one aspect of the content away from the teacher, and that is what we mean by blended instruction. Asynchronous instruction is a situation where instruction takes place in different times and different locations. So I can assign you work at your own pace, even using the same content, being in different locations, and still get the objectives that we need to achieve at the end of the day. So basically, these are the three types of distance education that we actually know of today. So for more than a century, you realize that a number of people in all parts of the world have been able to participate in guided independent study through correspondence courses, via the traditional mail system, where tasks are given on correspondence, and then what you simply do as a student is to respond to those tasks and then mail them in the post office. And this is the tradition. And if you ask your parents, much of what they actually did, especially at the highest education level in those days, were through correspondence, right? So learners receive printed lessons, they do written assignments, they send them to the remote instructor, and then that particular instructor is able to mark and then give feedback to them at the very quickest possible time, right? Now, however, even if this correspondence actually was done in a well structured manner, the proliferation of newer electronic technologies as we see them now tend to make it very, very possible to experience place-shifted instruction with a stunning array of additional auditory and also visual stimuli for far more rapidly and with a much richer range of interaction, not only with the instruction, but also with the learners themselves. So you see, with the emergence of different types of technologies, now we are able to interact one with the other, even at the same time, within different location, and still be able to succeed in the instruction that has been actually planned. So this lecture, therefore, would introduce us to the foundations of distance learning, the concepts that are emphasized, and also the provisions in terms of the information about delivering instruction at a distance. What are some of the nitty-gritties, the foundation, the principles that are actually emphasized? You know that you as a teacher, you basically need to be aware of a variety of these options as we discuss them. Not only for your information, but for both instruction at a distance, because you'll be engaged in these activities, you'll be engaged in distance learning at one point or the other, right? And including a broad concept of trying to see how you can incorporate a huge array of these technologies, right? And also issues to do with online learning, which we know basically relies on computer-based resources. And the computer is one of the key elements that needs emphasis even to this day. So you need to be able to select the best technology and also the media that will support your students' learning. Remember from the onset, we have emphasized that we are not using technology in teaching and learning for sure. We are using it to enhance student achievement, right? So basically, you can use these suggestions that we are going to present to help yourself and also get prepared to guide your students who are learning at a distance, because there are techniques and also there are principles that apply. It's not just a matter of teaching and learning, but students also need to understand how this process actually takes place. Right. So as a teacher, you need to be aware of these varieties of options and then see how you can maneuver around. Now, the concept distance learning, as we know, we have heard of it, a number of people use it. It has actually become the popular term to describe learning via telecommunication. What is telecommunication? Simply put, this term embraces a variety of technology and media configurations. And among those media configurations include audios, it includes videos, it includes computer-based resources that are used actually for a variety of ways and reasons. So what they all have in common, all these configurations, what they have in common is implied in the Greek root word tele, which means at a distance, right? At a distance. Or far off, that is, they are systems for communicating over a distance. Now, as we explore the broad topic of distance learning, we will basically focus on both the more traditional forms of audio and video at a distance, as well as online learning, like we're actually doing now, which has been popularized as a form of distance learning the world over. Now, Diamond Kagan in 1980, as early as 1980, actually identified key elements of a formal definition of what distance education should be regarded. And we take note that this identification, this description of what distance learning is in the 1980s has not really changed in terms of how we treat it to this day, right? Even with the emergence of new technologies, the descriptions, the elements still stand today from the time Kagan actually proposed them. And among these elements include physical separation of the learner from the teacher, like we are doing now. Yes, we can see each other on video, but we are not physically together. Yeah, you may be pretending to be looking at me, but you may be doing something else. Secondly, organized instructional program. the fact that distance education is what it is. It requires you, the teacher, to organize your to organize your instructional program in a systematic and structured manner, right? And then telecommunications technology, the use of devices, right? That would enhance the communicability between the learners and the teacher, regardless of where they actually are. And lastly, that it's a two-way communication. Even if we are not seeing each other physically, but there's that communication that goes on between the teacher and the learner. So these are the elements that he actually proposed as early as 1980. Now, you notice that the emphasis on student learning, whether in a teacher-led or student-centered environment, is as important in distance education setting as it is when we are doing face-to-face in a traditional classroom. So the same objectives, the same goals, the same aspect and elements, the content may be the same, right? Whether the teacher is using teacher-centered methods or otherwise, the aspects are the same, whether it be distance education or even the traditional one, the face-to-face as we know it. So these instructional strategies, therefore, apply to the same degree in distance learning as they do in the popular classroom. So take note that regardless of the technology that we use, regardless of whatever technology that we employ, from live teacher, where the teacher is able to see the students, to computer conferencing, an instructional communication system must actually perform some specific functions in order for them to be effective. It's not just a haphazard thing that needs to be done, right? And so basically, this aspect includes, among others, information presentation. You'll notice here that a standard element for any lesson is presentation of information. That is the major idea that teaching and learning emphasizes: information presentation, right? But you see, it's not only teacher-led methods that are actually emphasized, but also the procedures within student-centered approaches. So in whichever way in which we present the information, whether they are teacher-centered or student-centered approaches, there are common examples that we can actually align in this particular instance. And let me mention just 5 of them. Now, the common examples therefore include teacher presentation and demonstration, where the teacher presents or he can demonstrate a particular aspect of the teaching environment. Student presentation, or they can be in small groups. It can be in a form of printed text and illustrations, which may include textbooks. It can include handouts, correspondence, study materials. It can also include live or recorded voice, music, or other sounds like what I'm doing now. And it can also include full motion images, right? So these are the elements, the aspect, whether be teacher-centered or learner-centered, that can help you as a teacher to make your information, to make your presentation in terms of information that you want to display. The second aspect has to do with the practice, okay, with feedback. So what we know is that the most learning actually takes place when learners are participating actively. And you have seen how I normally make you participate even if I'm not able to see you, just to see how far you are actually following the lesson, right? So when learners are participating actively, mentally, the you know, mentally processing the material, it counts a lot, right? Teachers therefore induce activity in various ways, such as they can induce through question and answer activities that are carried out during, or you can, you know, carry them out after the lesson, discussion activities during the class, or you can give us homework. They include testing, they include structured group activities, like role play and games. They include group projects. They include also peer tutoring, right? So basically, these are the induced activity that the teacher can actually use in this, in trying to provide practice with feedback on the part of the learners, right? And then the third one is access to learning resources, right? Very, very important. Now, you know that lessons and courses are usually structured with basically the assumption that the students that we teach will actually spend time outside class working individually, or as it were, they can work in small groups with the material that you have actually guided for them to get, you know, homework that has been assigned to them. They can work on projects, they can do you know, work on papers and many other activities that may be there. So you know that external learning resources may include a number of aspects that we can. Let's look at just a few of these external learning resources that may be available on the part of the student. This may include printed materials, for example, textbooks, supplementary readings, worksheets. They include audio-visual materials, they like CDs, DVDs, and online resources. They include computer databases for online searches. They include guides for you who are doing sciences to enhance laboratory experiments, or sometimes even to examine specimens of real objects. And they also may include library materials, for example, original source document, as it were. Okay, so you see that it is quite necessary, therefore, that you as a teacher should be able to think about the instructional setting in a new light. So you know that the classroom is not a series of rooms connected electronically, and hence your role as a teacher may shift to that of a facilitator of the learning process rather than directly leading the class, so that the students do as you actually wish. So you as a teacher, you must be able to also keep a watchful eye, okay, on the class, to be sure that no one is falling behind. And you see, there are a lot of hitches that online learning and distance education has provided. You may not know, there are also reports that actually students sometimes they ask other people to write exams for them, because now when you present an exam, you give an exam online, you are not seeing the students, so they can be able to, they are able to do anything, right? So you as a teacher must devise ways by which that watchful eye, you know, goes through, so that the students are able to know that the teacher is observing whatever we're doing. And if you asked me, actually, if nicely tabulated and nicely set, online exams tend to be the hardest if a teacher who actually sets them has technical know-how on what to do. So with the latest technological advances, therefore, you will see that students can become more engaged in learning through interaction, yet it remains the teacher's responsibility to organize the instructional experience to encourage creativity, according to Simonson and others in 2006. Okay, so students, for their part, also need to know how to use distance education technology not only for anything, but to communicate with the teacher and with each other using proper communication etiquettes. Okay, so as we look at these elements of distance education, we must begin to see that all that which you have been looking at in terms of the estimates, standards for teachers as related to the type of knowledge and skill that teachers need to bring to the learning experience, all those must be seen within the concept of distance learning setting, so that now we are able to appreciate distance education. All right. So using the NETSET standards, as we have looked at them earlier on in other lectures, we therefore are prepared to define the literacy of distance learning with the following description. Among these descriptors include designing and facilitating learning experiences, right? Modeling and promoting learning and responsibility, and also engaging in lifelong learning. You see, to realize all these, you need expertise, or you need to have a knowledge as a teacher in order to handle such situations. All right. So here you can see that you can see a caption of a teacher that can use technology to help them monitor the class when actually teaching. You can see the teacher is right in his room on a computer, and maybe the students are with their own devices somewhere else all over the world, and is able to see what each one is actually doing at the same time, right? You can see here also the quality of the televised images that has improved with technology development, so that learning at a distance is similar to being in the classroom. And you can see here that the students are seated alone, and then there are two screens. There are other students who are watching this particular teacher here teaching. So I have two sets of students. Others are in class, and the others are in the other class somewhere else, and the teacher is alone there trying to deliver the information to the students at the same time, right? So there are basically three primary types of distance learning, as it were, in terms of resources that can be used to support student learning. And these include audio, video, and also online, okay? So those are basically the three primary types of distance learning resources. So when using any of these methods, you should be able to consider copyright issues also. You cannot just use, when you talk about copyright, much of what is online in terms of YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, in terms of audios, videos, and other online resources, they have their owners, and some of them actually may not allow their use without permission. So it's important for you teachers to know the importance of copyright issues. So you see, you know that audio has a rich history of facilitating instruction, especially as regards to distance education. When we were growing, I remember that I once saw students actually who were learning using a radio, all right? So radio was one of the first technologies actually that we can singularly point out that was used to deliver education in a remote manner. So there are still instruction applications of radio in some international settings, often in rural areas where internet connections may be very, very limited. The radio is still in use. So the key to successful use of audio in instruction, therefore, is to consider what resources are available to students at various locations where they are. Not only that, but also to be aware that sometimes these audios may be sufficient to convey the learning experiences that we want to guarantee on the students' part. So in order for you to use audio as a viable option for delivery of information, resources such as cassettes and CDs can actually be emailed to students for individuals to use or as a conference call that can be established among members of the class as a means for a two-way communication. Okay, so an audio teleconference, in terms of live interactive conversation using telephone lines, satellites, or the internet itself. These aspects connect students, they connect people from all over the world in different locations. Now, one issue associated with relying only on audio transmission, therefore, is the lack of visual information. When you are relying, when you are listening to audio, in most cases there is very little, not really little, but there may be the absence of of visual aspects of our learning. Okay, just a moment. Sorry. All right. So you see, however, even with that, audio can still be supplemented by providing visual information, such as handouts. You can give, after making a presentation, you can give handouts to students, a PowerPoint presentation that can be sent, through email. And these days, we even have, we even send information and documents through WhatsApp, through which the students are able to see. So when do you use audio technology? Here is just a representation of when you can use audio technology, and it is said here when students' learning will be enhanced by, in terms of the guidelines, connecting students with resources, with a resource person. You can use that. For example, students can interact with an author about his or her book, or with public officials to discuss, current registration. When you use it to reach the rural student, the example here, students can attend an advanced placement course that might have been unavailable otherwise. Working collaboratively with other students, example, students can discuss projects, they can discuss assignments at the same time, or location that best meets their needs. Okay, reaching a student who is unable to attend class due to an illness or disability, the teacher can record the lesson. Students here do not need to miss the class discussion or other instruction because they are restricted at home. And so you can use audio to reach the students out there, right? So basically, that's what we can talk about audio. Let's look at video technology, right? Now, there are three major types of video technologies that we emphasize. They are what are called streamed video. There's also television and also CDs and DVDs. What are streamed video? Now, when you talk about streamed video, delivered via the internet to computers, these streamed videos can be viewed on individual computers or through a digital projector. A projector that can be connected to a computer for the whole class to see. For instance, sometimes you can be live on your Facebook page or your Instagram page or your YouTube page, and then connect that particular page to, to the projector, so that a wider range of people are able to see what you are and hear what you have to say, right? So the pre-recorded video is transmitted to the computer in packets or small segments to make the downloading of the video easier and less of a memory drain for classroom computer. And even for this particular lecture, this is exactly what I'm actually doing. Okay, so video titles are available in nearly every content area, for pre-kindergarten through grade 12, usually through a subscription obtained by the school district. You know, there's a lot that can be accessed on the internet by the school and even by individual teachers through video. Okay, so in addition to these mainstreamed videos, titles also include instructional suggestions, handout masters, and other supplementary materials. Okay, so to add flexibility, you as a teacher, you can decide in advance to use only section of a video, because it may not be the whole video that you may want. There may be some interest in some parts of the video that you may want to students to see. Therefore, you are able to to customize the experience so as to ensure that students will view only those portions of the video that are critical for their learning, right? So the unlimited united streaming through Discovery Education and Learn 360 are both sources for hundreds of titles in all content areas and grade levels. Now, these are websites that you can go to in order for you to find what suits you. Just Google what it is that you want to get in your subject area, and it's able to give you that. So this is a typical example of such sites where you can, you know, stream videos and use this can actually be used in near every content area as we have indicated earlier on. So then the second one is television. The television is one tool that is very common to all. Now, we all realize that television technologies, in most cases, offer many different types of instructional opportunities for the learners, though sometimes they offer such learning in a negative way. Now, using television, students are able to engage in independent learning. How? By viewing programs on such channels as Discovery, okay, or history channels. Now the world is so advanced. There are even channels for English, for social studies, and all that. What you only need is either to subscribe or critically look at search, and then you find them. And they are more formally, learners can be enrolled in a televised course that is required for credit or for graduation from a program of study. So we use the term one way, as we have indicated earlier on, to refer to television delivery system that transmit programs to students without an interactive connection to the teacher. Because in most cases, when students actually, you know, they watch television, it's a one-way thing. They are not able to ask questions direct on the person who is presenting, unless they jot down the question and then ask the teacher after the class. However, virtually all television delivery can be converted into a two-way television communication system by the use of a device for sending audio feedback to the presenter. Even as he's presenting, you may be connected to WhatsApp, and then as that person is presenting on TV, you are able to send information. You have noticed that sometimes people who are streaming live on Facebook, they also check on the feedback from their friends or from their listeners, and they are able to answer such questions. Okay, so you can see here, teachers should guide students in their viewing of television program so that they only view things that may be necessary for that particular lesson. Okay, so the talkback capability can be added by means of telephone for calling the originating classroom, as we will see later on. In other interactive settings with two-way communication of both audio and television, interaction is achieved by equipping both the sending and receiving sites with cameras, okay? And Microsoft, a school may operate its own video teleconference facilities, or they may actually lease them as needed for particular lesson. And you can see here, that we have computers that are set everywhere. This is not in one room, right? And so students are able to, to interact one with the other. And this is a one-way television technology. And this one is a two-way. You can see the speakers. There's only one speaker here, but here there are 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers that are actually used at a point. So in such cases, therefore, television simulate the regular classroom setting by allowing interaction between students and the teacher. So what you need to note here is that some interactive television systems use what they call compressed videos, which removes redundant video information for distribution. So you may record a video of some kind, and then you may trim it and you may compress it so that you can remove those things that may not be necessary for the same. Although the video information appears jerky, it is much less expensive to deliver than full motion video. When you compress video, it is also used for computer desktop videoing, so that you don't eat a lot of space. When then do you use a one-way television technology? You would see here that you can use them to reinforce classroom instruction, and the examples that are given here for young students, they can watch a program at home with parents that will help reinforce specific lessons from the classroom. And also, as a way of expanding the textbook material, some textbooks have limited information on a topic that may be expanded by viewing a documentary. Supplementary information, students can become better informed on a topic of interest while viewing an instructional information, informative television program. In terms of keeping current, civic education, students can watch the evening news or other types of news programs to gather up-to-date information for classroom discussion. So this is how you can use a one-way television technology. The third one and the last that we will end today's lecture has to do with video in the use of CDs and DVD discs. Now, these in most cases can be purchased by individuals or by schools, or you can actually borrow them from a number of consortium collection for a period of time. And in some countries and places, actually, they'll charge you for that. So video can also be rented from a local video store or ordered online through video rental companies. And, even on Amazon, they'll rent you some. A word of caution there also as teachers is that you are advised regarding restrictions for the viewing of rented videos. So if you rent a video, you pay for it, or it can be free. There are restrictions that you don't need to share it unless it is advisable to do so. So videos on CDs and DVDs can be viewed on individual computers, or they can be displayed for the whole class to review with a digital projector, okay? So a DVD can also be viewed on a DVD player. These are things that we know in our homes, and students can be able to see. So when do you use the two-way television technology? And there are guidelines here and examples. When you are extending, classroom instruction, when you're expanding the textbook material so that the students get more meat from the context, reaching the rural student, you can use the two-way television and also supplementary information. Okay, so basically these are the examples that we actually find here. Now, take note that current practices around the globe basically extend fair use into the digital world, and they acknowledge that the boundaries of teaching space actually extend beyond the walls of the classroom. That we should stop having this thinking that learning can only take place in a building. So current practice allows greater liberty to teachers in their use of materials in an online environment, permitting the display and performance of nearly all types of materials, materials such as visuals, sculptures, art, music, and many others, as long as they meet the following conditions. Number one, the transmission is an integral part of the system. How are you going to transmit that information? Ongoing instruction activity mediated by the instructor. Secondly, the transmission is the transmission directly related to and of material assistance in the teaching of content. Don't just use material just because you want to show the teacher, the lecturer, or whoever is actually looking at you. You must have reasons to use that. Is it connected to the content that you are teaching? And also the transmission is solely for and limited to students officially enrolled in the course. So you don't make these materials for others. For instance, this recording that I'm doing here, even if I post it on YouTube, it will be captioned specifically for you as students in this particular course. So the teacher therefore informs students that these materials used may be subject to copyright protection, right? So the institution employs measures to prevent retention of materials in excessive form by students for longer than the duration of the period of the course. And also, if I have to make videos or whatever materials, the institution employs measures that limit the transmission of such materials, okay? And in order to facilitate digital transmission, teachers are permitted to scanning of some materials, but only if the material is not already available in digital form. Now, if I sent you a book, an e-book, a book on soft copy, some books, when you share it online, even using the email, they'll remind you that that is not your material and you need to seek permission. And this is what we are actually talking about here. So basically, there are certain specific restrictions that are spelled out for use when we talk about copyright materials in distance education. They include that the fact that there is time limit in their use comparable to the time the materials would have been used in a face-to-face instruction. So if you have to make them current, you need to go through again, make changes to those materials, right? Then secondly, teachers may not transmit textbooks or printed materials or other media, include CDs and others, which are typically purchased or acquired by students. So most of the materials that we may get online by way of payment, you are not actually allowed to transmit them in any form to anyone. Off-air recordings may not be altered from their original content. They may not be combined or merged. The problem here is the fact that when you make a recording of such, as long as students are listening, you cannot alter, you cannot make changes and edit. If there is a mistake, then it goes just like that, and students will be misled. So take note that online learning, therefore, what others call electronic learning or e-learning, is therefore instruction delivered electronically using computer-based material. So the materials are often accessed through a network, including website, the internet, and also intranets. However, one thing you need to take note as a teacher is that e-learning involves not just accessing information, all right? But it also involves assisting learners with specific outcomes. There is a lot that is there at stake online. So your job is to assist them to ensure that the outcomes that you have set as a teacher may come to pass. In addition to delivering instruction via e-learning, the teacher can monitor performance and report learner progress, okay? Because you are actually monitoring and seeing how they are actually faring. Right, so the uses of online learning in education, therefore, are increasing, as we know, especially with the coming of the coming of the coronavirus. So you and your students, therefore, can obtain information housed in many distant, physical, inaccessible libraries around the world and make use of that. Resources once beyond the dreams of all, but the most affluent are readily available to everyone. So students, and teachers can therefore enhance classroom learning by accessing information from an array of sources that includes libraries, number of databases, some special interest group who may be posting a lot of things, and also by communicating via computer with other students or, with experts in that particular field of study, right? So basically, the activities, such as the Monarchy, Butterfly Journey, all these are websites that you can check on, all right? They make it possible for students and teachers alike to recap the benefits of connecting to national network of students, teachers, and also scientists to investigate a variety of topics. And a typical example, therefore, is actually shown on this particular image here, right? So because computers have the ability to deliver information in any media, including text, video, and audio recordings of voice and music, the computer has become a boundless laboratory. When you look at the computer, you're looking at the library, the whole world. So students are able to communicate instantly with text, they can communicate with picture, they can communicate with data, they can communicate with, in a two-way audio, and the resulting interaction are changing the roles by which we look at all these things, right? So basically, this is what we can have. When we meet next, we'll look at teaching at a distance. How does it actually take place? So have a good day, and may the Lord bless you all.